This is CBC Here and Now.
Only one flight a day from Toronto to Deer Lake starting in the new year, and that's really going to affect rotational workers' commute.
You know, that is a group of people, a workforce, that have been significantly hit by the pandemic.
I'll bring you all the details tonight on Here and Now.
Well, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas, and it will as we head towards the weekend for parts of eastern Newfoundland.
This is a company that got too big, too fast.
Canopy Growth pulls the plug.
The marijuana grower won't go into production here, killing the promise of jobs. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Anthony Germain.
And I'm Carolyn Stokes. Those stories in just a few minutes. But first, we start with a story from our investigative unit. Liberal MHA Sherry Gambin Walsh has been sitting on the backbenches for months after her sudden and dramatic exit from cabinet in April. Then Premier Dwight Ball removed her after news broke that the RCMP had launched an investigation. Gambin Walsh was accused of leaking cabinet secrets, but she was never charged. And tonight she's speaking out after CBC Investigates got unsealed RCMP documents related to her case. Rob Antle has the details.
Sherry Gambin Walsh was removed from cabinet in early April after the Mounties seized her cell phones. But unsealed RCMP court documents show that the investigation began here at RNC headquarters a month before that.
Oh, yes, I made a mistake of confirming for Officer Didham a rumor that he already knew.
She had been accused of providing confidential cabinet information about police promotions to this RNC officer, Paul Didham. Information that quickly spread and caused consternation in the ranks. According to court documents, RNC Chief Joe Boland called the leak devastating for morale.
I do not wish to take full responsibility for discontent and poor morale within the RNC. I think that's just not, it's ridiculous.
She's read the RCMP documents called an ITO and disagrees with a lot of what she saw.
I decided that there were significant factual untruths there and that I had this opportunity now that I could address this situation.
The court filings allege that Gambin Walsh offered Didham a job, something she says didn't happen, among other allegations in the ITO. In the end, no charges were laid.
In this case here, the primary suspect, the cabinet minister, would have been found not to have benefited in any material way from sharing the information. It is almost akin to sharing the information as a gesture of friendship, and that is what our investigation did uncover.
All this is over a text message. This is all over a text message between two friends where I mistakenly confirmed something for him one evening when he was frustrated.
Rob Antle, CBC News, St. John's.
Now, there is much more on this story on our website, cbc.ca/NL. We have more about what was in those RCMP documents, and we'll hear more from Sherry Gambin Walsh herself coming up in about 45 minutes. Well, in other news, Canopy Growth is out. The company says the massive cannabis production facility built in the White Hills area of St. John's will not open. Opposition members say the loss shows poor management by the provincial government, but the province says Canopy failed, not them. Here and Now's Mark Quinn reports.
It was a sort of gold rush.
The first legal receipt issued in Canada.
Great excitement when cannabis was first sold in this province. And with Canopy, Newfoundland was getting in on it. Here in the White Hills, Canopy was supposed to create 145 jobs and produce 12,000 kilos of marijuana annually. But now that won't happen. 14 people working with Canopy in this province have been laid off, and Canopy says it's going to repay $1.9 million to Newfoundland and Labrador. Conservative leader Ches Crosby is saying, "I told you so."
We did a press conference outside the gates of Canopy Growth here in St. John's, and I warned then that the driving force behind the Canopy Growth deal and the government was the desire to fatten the backs of Liberal insiders, not jobs and growth at all. And now we see the end result of that only a year and a half later. Canopy is shutting up and going into mothballs. The only people to benefit from this is not Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, it's liberal cronies.
It's a patently stupid, false statement. That's the only thing I can say, because if the province didn't pay 1 cent out, who got it?
Industry Minister Andrew Parsons says what happened today shows that the province had actually hammered out a good deal.
The government at this point has not given them anything. What it is, there's a $1.9 million that's been paid through remittances, which is a complex process. But that $1.9 million, which has been paid, will be paid back to government before the weekend.
So what happens here now? This 150,000 square foot cannabis facility that Canopy promised to spend $40 million to build may now be no more than a white elephant in White Hills. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, the forecast panned out fairly well for parts of central Newfoundland as far as the snowfall totals go. Gander West picked up 22 centimeters since last night, and then Gander Bay picked up about 5 centimeters. So we did see lots of rain as well through parts of eastern Newfoundland. Bonavista, 39 millimeters of rain. Clark's Beach picked up 28 millimeters, and then in St. John's about 33 millimeters, and even a rumble of thunder last night if you didn't sleep through it like I did. Don't normally see those December thunderstorms, but we certainly did last night. Now that low that was responsible for that has moved off. We are seeing some showers and flurries for parts of the west coast, and as we head through the next couple of days, that potential for snow heads east. So we do have a special weather statement in effect for most of the Avalon, and I'm just going to play this through for you just to show you when we're expecting that snow. So it looks like by Thursday night, an area of low pressure tomorrow night, overnight, is going to move in. That's going to bring that risk of some snow, which will make the commute a little bit messy for Friday morning, but I will have all those details coming up.
Well, we have several significant COVID-19 developments to tell you about tonight. The Pfizer vaccine has been approved, but officials are warning it won't change public health measures, at least not yet. And there are also some concerns now over community spread and a change in the size of gatherings of friends and family as we head into the holidays. Here now is Peter Cowan, joins us now live with the details. So Peter, let's start with community spread. Where is it and what are we talking about exactly?
What we're talking about here, Anthony, are the cases that we saw in Harbour Breton over the weekend. They've looked high and low, and they can't tie it to any travelers or any existing cases. So Dr. Janice Fitzgerald said today that is a concern. They are moving rapid testing equipment into the community, and they're expanding who is able to get tested. There have been no additional cases found, which I guess is both good news and bad news. Today, Dr. Janice Fitzgerald said there are a couple possibilities. The origin of this case might never had symptoms, so never got tested. This person could have left the province before they were able to get tested and link it to this case, or this person could have had minor symptoms and just assumed that it was a cold.
We may end up finding cases related to this, and if we do, we'll deal with them. But we certainly, I think, Central Health and people in Harbour Breton have acted very quickly to sort of change the way things were being done, and you know, in reducing their contacts and being more careful. So hopefully we can prevent further onward spread.
Well, let's talk about vaccines now, Peter. A lot of people are hoping to get one once people get that vaccine. Does this mean they can stop wearing masks and having to quarantine themselves?
The short answer to that is no. This isn't really a get-out-of-jail-free card, at least not in the short term, over the first couple of months when we're just seeing a few people getting vaccinated. So the first thing that it's important to know is it takes a month in order for the vaccine to take effect, and you're going to need 2 shots, so it takes time for your body to build up that immunity. So we're not really going to have to address this problem until sometime in January. The province hasn't decided whether to issue vaccination passports. That's something that Ontario announced today they are doing. And for the next few months, Dr. Janice Fitzgerald says the vaccination isn't going to get you out of things like quarantine or having to wear a mask.
Even with the 90% effective rate, we're still looking at a certain portion of the population who may not respond, and we don't know immediately who those are. So we are keeping those measures in place. and there will still be a significant portion of unvaccinated people.
So the question, of course, is going to be that this may change. A lot of this depends on the science that we see develop, especially as we see those people that got vaccinated early and we know how long this might last, Anthony.
Okay, so Peter, before we let you go, an important change about the size of gatherings as well.
Yeah, so today they're basically, what they're doing is all along they've been saying over the holidays you should only have close contact with 20 people. What they're now doing is putting some rules in place to kind of help follow that. So what we're seeing is they're now saying there's going to be a limit of 20 people for informal gatherings. These are inviting people into your home, those sorts of things that aren't organized by an event. For those more formal gatherings, the limit is staying the same. It's staying at 100, so this is if it's being organized by an individual business or a group, there's someone that's taking charge. This is going to be key for religious services, especially as we head into Christmas. Usually that's, this is the popular time for year. And we did see from Dr. Janice Fitzgerald today, she said she doesn't expect to reduce that organized gathering limit as long as cases stay the way they are.
Peter, that's Peter Cowan reporting live from our newsroom. Well, with the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine now approved, Health Canada has also released its timeline of how Canadians are actually going to get the vaccine. It expects to have 3 million people vaccinated by the end of winter and as many as 19 million done by the summer. That's about half the population of Canada, and it plans to have everybody vaccinated by this time next year. Now, as Peter just mentioned, Ontario is planning to issue proof of vaccination documents, those so-called passports, and that's when people in that province start getting the shot. Ontario's Health Minister Christine Elliott says people who can't prove they've been vaccinated could be barred from certain activities.
There may be some restrictions that may be placed on people that don't have vaccines for travel purposes, to be able to go to theaters and other places. But that will be up to the individual person to decide.
As is happening here, Elliott says vaccinations won't be mandatory, but people who don't get the shot may not be allowed access to spaces where people gather in close physical contact. And she says that could include theaters and cinemas. Elliott also says some people may need proof of vaccination for work purposes. The province has not given any more details on enforcement or what that documentation is going to look like.
Stronger action is not taken now. We know that hundreds or potentially thousands more Albertans could die.
Not happy about it, but we're going to do our part.
I just mostly worry about small businesses.
I think it should have happened sooner. I mean, the writing was on the wall.
Well, meanwhile, people in Alberta are about to face some of the toughest COVID-19 restrictions yet for that province after soaring infection rates and hospitalizations. Under new rules, masks are now mandatory. All indoor and outdoor gatherings have been canceled. Restaurants, bars, casinos, gyms, all forced to close their doors starting this weekend. And in about 20 minutes, we'll check in with our CBC reporter in Fort McMurray for the very latest from there. Well, now to the West Coast, where there's another round of cuts to flights out of the Deer Lake International Airport. Starting in January, Air Canada is reducing its service from the West Coast to Toronto and axing all of its Halifax flights. Now, this is the third major round of cuts in the Atlantic region in the last 6 months. Here now's Colleen Connors was at the airport today, and she has this report.
A few people wait to board, mostly provincial airline flights and charters. It's quiet, but it will be even quieter in January when Air Canada cuts daily flights from Toronto down to just 4 days a week, affecting rotational workers the most.
It is distressing. You know, they're having challenging times right now, and I'm sure it's quite challenging and stressful for them and their families. I think it is going to cause people to question, whether or not this is the right place for them to continue to live and carry out that commute.
Air Canada is providing those 4 flights during peak times. Passenger traffic volume here is down by 80% since March, with a $2 million loss in revenue this year. That loss is felt by the airport staff and all the businesses it supports. The airport will survive, Priddle says, but big changes are in the works to make sure it does.
We are going to have to look at our hours of operation. We're going to have to look at, when the volume of traffic is going to be here and how we need to meet those needs. But when we don't have the volume and the demand for service, is there anything we can do to save some money?
The airport is losing $250,000 in revenue every month. Priddle says staff are anxious and worried about the future. She was not surprised to see cuts to the Halifax flight, given the closure of the Atlantic bubble. The only way the airport will recover, in her eyes, is if the federal government steps in.
The air industry has been one of the hardest hit, and Canada is the only G7 country that has not provided substantial relief that is sector specific. So, you know, it is a sign of the times. We have been a long time dealing with this, and the repercussions are coming out in announcements like this.
There will be a full assessment of these cuts in February, but revenue at the Deer Lake Airport is looking quite bleak for 2021. Colleen Connors, CBC News, Deer Lake.
Well, now to Twillingate, where police believe they tracked down the arsonist who started fires in the community over the spring and summer. A 34-year-old man is arrested and facing 3 charges of arson. He was charged after a police investigation into 14 suspicious fires. The series of fires happened between May and September, and many involved brush and trees, although in one case 3 sheds caught fire, and in another an old school burned. Quad or dirt bike tracks led away from the scene of the fires. Police stress that the arrest is not connected to the fire that destroyed the historic Ashbourne house. That investigation is continuing. Well, the Muskrat Falls development marked a major milestone this week. Power from the mega project flowed to island customers for the first time last Friday. Labrador customers received the first power from the development back in September. As for how far along the project is, Nalcor says construction is now 99% complete. The focus now is on commissioning the generating facility, transmission lines, and equipment between Labrador and Newfoundland. Well, for many people, a vehicle is a luxury that can easily be taken for granted, but not everyone is fortunate enough to have one. Today in St. John's, a local body shop made a difference to one family by giving them a reliable set of wheels just in time for Christmas. Cease Hare has that story.
It marks the 17th time Collision Clinic gave a refurbished car to a family that needs one. And this year, it's for Crystal Chafe and her 11-year-old son, Ben. The 2-year-old reconditioned car comes with insurance for a year, registration, gas cards, and 4 winter tires.
So we're just going to drive out, and I remember when they called me, it's just, you know, you're winning this car. Look, I get to take the keys, and I'm just going to drive away. Like, no one's going to stop me.
Chafe is on a work term and has been getting by using her mother's car to get back and forth to work. This gift, she says, helps in so many other ways, too.
Ben has lots of appointments as well, so there's times when even being able to walk to work would never help me, because I'd have to try to get someone else to pick us both up and bring us to the hospital, you know, and see your doctors, you know, that you've been seeing.
Parts and other supplies are donated, and employees pitch in too, donating their spare time.
And I've seen some guys even bigger than this guy with little tears in their eyes as somebody drove away here. So, you know, it just brings the whole staff, it makes that special time of the year for us.
It all started 17 years ago with an idea from an employee who thought it was important they do something.
Sometimes bad things or hard things happen to good people. And I have had people in my life that have struggled because they didn't have a car. And there's certainly no shame in it. I was a single parent. I had no car. So I certainly can identify with some of the applicants.
Crystal Chafe says, commuting and medical appointments aside, their new car means they won't be held back anymore and will be able to visit family on the southern shore this Christmas. Cease here, CBC News, St. John's.
Some good news for those in town. St. John's has begun work on the Bannerman Park Loop. Crews were out today getting the rink winter ready. The hope, the skates can hit the ice by Christmas, weather dependent. The city is still ironing out the rules for distancing, and in case you're wondering, the earliest the loop has opened is December 18th, so fingers crossed. But speaking of weather, it does look like there is some good ice-making weather in the forecast over the next few days. I'll have that coming up.
The pandemic has changed how we're celebrating this December. Many Newfoundlanders and Labradorians won't be home for the holidays. We want to give you a chance to send a letter home. Pull out your smartphone, make sure you hold it horizontally, and record a minute or so greeting to someone you're not going to get to see in person this holidays. You can send it by email to lettershome@cbc.ca. We'll air as many as we can on radio, TV, and online. This Christmas, we can still come together even if we're apart.
Well, before we get to the weather, we have a special weather report for you.
Yes, prepare for a serious dose of adorable.
My name is Charlie Tobin, meteorologist. Today is December the 8th. It currently is 3 degrees. Now, we will talk about it. Okay. This is Newfoundland. Newfoundland, it is very rainy and windy. If you live in this blue spot, it is very snowy. If you live right here, in this white spot, it is very, well, sunny and snowy in Labrador. Now,
How adorable is that? That is Charlie Tobin. He will be filling in for me over Christmas. Just kidding. Maybe one day he will. But that is part of his school project.
So adorable.
Yeah.
You should have one of those wands.
I need one, don't I? The clicker just doesn't do the same thing, does it?
It doesn't have the same effect.
Not at all, no.
So how are things looking over the next few days?
Yeah.
Cooling down?
Yes, cooling down for sure. You know, we saw some warmer temperatures today in the east, which is why we saw all of that rain. Let's take a look at those temperatures. 5 degrees in St. John's, and then in behind that, the temperatures were hovering around 1 or 2 degrees. 3 in Deer Lake, and then even some above 0 temperatures up through parts of Labrador as well. Happy Valley, Goose Bay sitting at 1. Now currently that's where you're still sitting, but temperatures are starting to drop across the island. 1 degree in Gander, still sitting around 2 in St. John's. That should be where we sit for most of the night tonight. But if we take a look at the current satellite and radar, you can see lots of shower and flurry activity in the west, and then we do have a few showers and or flurries moving across the Avalon as we speak. That will generally continue tonight as we see that low pull off, and in behind that some of that cooler air with the potential for flurries tonight for most of us. Up through Labrador, not a whole lot happening. A few flurries for you as well, but nothing in the way of accumulation for the most part. As we look at the temperatures overnight, like I said, only hovering, or should stay steady rather, around 2 degrees for St. John's. Those winds are going to stay brisk as well, 30 to 50 kilometers per hour. Along the west coast, not too much in the way of wind. Westerlies 10 to 20 kilometers per hour. But again, with those temperatures hovering around 0, the potential for showers will eventually change over to flurries through the overnight. Temperatures below 0 for most of Labrador as well. Lab City -8 tonight, -2 in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, and Cartwright. You should sit and hover around -1 through the overnight. Now tomorrow, not a whole lot happening either. We might see some showers or flurries for the west coast. Same thing through central, and then for eastern areas of the island, we could see a few showers to start through the day. But as we head through to the evening and overnight hours, that's when the next low will skirt just south of the Avalon, and that's going to bring the potential for some snow. So we'll definitely talk about that in just a few minutes as we see how much snow is possible. But as we head through the day tomorrow, most of us should be sitting around 1 to 4 degrees. The winds will eventually ease as well in the east, which will be nice, well, pretty much across the board. We're looking at winds up through Labrador, anywhere from 10 to 15 kilometers per hour, so not much to speak of, but then generally cloudy and or flurry activity expected for most of Labrador. -5 will be the afternoon high for you in Lab City. So taking a look at what's going to happen overnight Thursday into Friday, looking like we'll see a little bit of a messy commute for the early Friday morning, as most of the Avalon will likely be seeing snow, which could be heavy at times. At this point, it's looking like about 5 to 10 centimeters is possible. Some locally higher amounts further east, just depending on how close or how far away that low eventually does track. It may change over to rain or mix with rain at times as well through areas along the coast, bringing those accumulations down significantly. But again, you know, 5 to 10 centimeters, just going to be messy through the first half of the day, and then eventually that could even end as rain for some of us. So certainly something to keep an eye on for that. As we head into Saturday, though, we're going to see another shot of snow possible for parts of the west coast. Head across the island through the day on Saturday. Then a ridge of high pressure will move in, and that is going to clear things out for most of Labrador. However, staying a little bit unsettled into Sunday for most of the island, with the potential for some flurries. Here's where we should be sitting on Friday. Again, those temperatures hovering around 1, 2 degrees for the Avalon. So what does fall will likely be fairly wet. And then as we head towards central, hovering around the 0 degree mark, with the potential for some flurries sticking around, maybe a few peeks of sun in the mix as well. Corner Brook, you're looking at 2 degrees with either flurries or showers, and then staying unsettled for most of Labrador. So the potential for some flurries and temperatures below 0 for you. As we head into Saturday, that's when things will calm down a little bit. We're going to see more sunshine or at least a few more peaks of sunshine. Temperatures again hovering between 0 and just above 0, a little cooler for the northern peninsula, into the minus single digits as that ridge of high pressure starts to dominate. It is bringing some cooler air. Overnight lows certainly going to be quite cool for parts of Labrador, even heading towards central as well. Here's where we should be sitting temperature-wise for St. John's and eastern Newfoundland as we head towards the weekend. Again, not moving much. By Monday, we might see a big, or not a big, but a jump in those temperatures into the mid-single digits. And there's that low I was talking about, temperatures overnight dipping into the minus double digits for parts of eastern or central, rather, and western Newfoundland. Flurries, the story through Saturday and even into Sunday and Monday, it looks like for most of us. For eastern Labrador, you're looking at temperatures, like I said, dipping Saturday night under that ridge of high pressure, back down to the minus 20s, even minus 25, it looks like, for Labrador or Western Labrador. Wanted to share this shot. Finally getting some merry and bright contest photos. This one was sent in from St. John's. Leslie shared that one with us. And a little bit of an update on that merry and bright contest. There was a problem with the link online. It is fixed now, so if you want to enter your photo, just go to the Munn Botanicals Facebook page there.
Yes, and remember, the Botanical Gardens can't host its usual festival of lights this year, so it wants to see your lights instead. The deadline for entries has been extended to December 16th at noon. Voting will begin on December 18th, and there are some cash prizes, so it could be worthwhile to send in a pic. And I know, Ashley, you'll be looking through them as well to feature some during the weather.
Certainly will.
Well, most of the travel cases in this province have come from Alberta, and that province has now seen a massive outbreak, including a large increase in hospitalizations as well as the number of deaths. Now people there are about to see some of the toughest restrictions yet.
Stronger action is not taken now. We know that hundreds or potentially thousands more Albertans could die. We cannot let that happen. We will not let that happen.
Alberta reported more than 1,700 new infections yesterday, pushing its number of active cases to another all-time high. The province currently has the highest rate of infections per capita in Canada. And under the new restrictions, masks now mandatory. All indoor and outdoor social gatherings are banned, and many businesses are closed for at least a month, or they will be. And that includes restaurants, bars, casinos, gyms, everything. The restrictions are going to stretch right over Christmas. Premier Jason Kenney says people must stay within their own household bubble.
Made no secret of the fact that Alberta's government has been reluctant to use extraordinary powers to damage or destroy livelihoods in this way. But we are now at a place where viral transmission is so widespread in the community that it does not any longer matter how careful business operators are.
Well, joining me now is Jamie Malbuff in Fort McMurray. So, Jamie, what has the reaction been to these new measures in Fort Mac?
So yesterday we had those new measures come into place. That's mandatory masks, no outdoor gatherings, and the big one, no indoor gatherings with people outside your household, and that includes over Christmas. So as you can imagine, that last point isn't going over very well. A lot of people are resistant. Some people are saying they'll comply. It's not a big deal. They just want to curb the cases. But there are others who are saying the government can't cancel Christmas and they're going to be gathering anyway, despite the consequences if they come.
Now, there's been so much interest here in our province watching people travel from Alberta, and we've watched what's happened in Alberta over the past couple of weeks. What has the lead up been like in Fort McMurray over the past couple of weeks?
So Fort McMurray has a triggered mask bylaw, and that was put in place in early October. And so what that means is when Fort McMurray and the surrounding rural Wood Buffalo area hits 50 cases, the mask bylaw comes into effect for 30 days. And we saw that kick into effect about 2 weeks after that mask bylaw was created, and it hasn't gone away since. Our numbers really have just been going up. So I called businesses after that initial bylaw went into effect, and they said most people were fine complying. Some people didn't remember at first. You needed gentle reminders, but for the most part, it was okay. In the last few days, we have seen the cases stop increasing quite so sharply. We've been hovering around the 220 case mark, and a week ago in Fort McMurray, we were at 239. So there has been some improvement, a little bit of leveling off, but we don't know how long that'll last.
And just to reiterate, that's a municipal bylaw to make people wear masks. It's not the province that did that, right?
Yes, but the province did put in a mandatory mask bylaw yesterday.
Okay, so people are going to wear their masks all the way up to Christmas. Christmas, Jamie, is only a couple of weeks away. What do you think it's going to be like heading to Christmas in Alberta?
So it's the new regulations are very similar to what we saw at the beginning of the pandemic. There are a few differences. So gyms, casinos, dine-in services, those are all banned. We're back to takeout and delivery only. Retail stores are still open, but only at 15% capacity. And we have mandatory work from home measures. All outdoor and indoor social gathering is restricted. You can only be with the people living in your household. And if you live alone, you can visit with 2 people outside your home, but they always have to be the same 2 people. And businesses have been given until Saturday to put these new restrictions into effect. And I know a lot of businesses like hair salons, massage parlors are seeing huge increases of people wanting to book appointments before that happens.
A final question for you, Jamie. A lot of attention here, as I mentioned, to travel. What about from the point of view of people living in Alberta and Fort McMurray? Is there much attention being paid to Newfoundlanders and Labradorians coming back and forth, back and forth?
Obviously, there are a lot of Newfoundlanders living out here, but there's also a lot of people from across the country. And what I'm hearing from locals is that a lot of people are concerned about that fly-in, fly-out, because people from BC, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Newfoundland could be bringing COVID in, and they're going into the airport, into the grocery store, going to work, and they could be spreading it that way. So I've heard many times that people want to see jobs go to locals first. 1, because it could help decrease that travel spread, and 2, because we have lost a lot of jobs here and people could use the work.
All right. Certainly we've heard the same thing here with hire local first, and we've got people working all over across the country, as there are Albertans working across the country. And you're working for us this evening on Here and Now, so appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome back. Nunavut was doing well during the pandemic until the territory marked its first case of COVID-19 in early November. With cases popping up in smaller communities like Arviat, Whale Cove, and Rankin Inlet, Nunavut went into a 2-week lockdown last month to try to contain the spread. The territory currently has 48 active cases. Teresa Lee is a Newfoundlander who's living and working in Iqaluit. In this latest episode of Far From Home, she speaks with Here and Now's Jen White about what it's like to live there during a pandemic.
Hey Teresa, how are you?
I'm all right. Hanging in there. How about yourself?
Good, thanks. So you're currently far from home. Can you tell me where you're from originally and where you're living right now?
I'm born and raised St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. My parents still live there. And currently I'm in Iqaluit, Nunavut.
Wow, Iqaluit. So what is it like living there?
It's amazing. It's a beautiful place, incredible, resilient people, like very interesting. Yeah, just like a beautiful part of Canada that very few people have experienced.
So how does it compare to home? How is it different?
It's very similar to home. It's seaside. There are actually a lot of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians who have made this their home as well. And so I work among a lot of them. I'm friends with a lot of them. So it feels very similar. But obviously quite a bit colder and a little bit less daylight, as you can imagine.
And where do you work? What do you do?
So I work in the hospital here in Kekatani General. I'm a physician, and I actually also work in Nunavut, Northwest Territories, which is where my partner lives and works.
So there were no COVID cases in Nunavut for such a long time. What's it like there now currently?
I mean, it's a bit surreal. For 8 months, we were heralded as one of the last places on Earth untouched by the pandemic. And then in less than 2 weeks, it's sort of exploded.
And how are you feeling? Do you feel safe right now?
I feel all right. I mean, we'll deal with it if it does come to happen. I mean, hopefully these measures will keep everyone safe, but certainly this outbreak has highlighted some of the major health discrepancies and social discrepancies within the territory. I mean, certainly for me, it's sort of a minor annoyance to have to queue up in grocery stores and especially at the post office where everybody's really relying heavily on online shopping. But I'm very grateful that I'm quite privileged that I worry a lot less about its impact on myself.
And as a physician in the north, are you nervous about the situation going forward?
I mean, certainly. We've had 8 months to sort of practice our drills, to accumulate resources. We have really great leadership, and we have a lot of emergency protocols that we've been practicing.
And in terms of the population that's in the north, are they more vulnerable than other populations in terms of COVID?
Yeah, certainly in many ways. I mean, housing and food insecurity is a huge social determinant that's been very challenging for Northerners, given the distance that food has to travel to get to us and how reliant it is on air travel in order to be delivered. And certainly there's a lot of issues with crowded housing, lack of housing resources. So, you know, you have entire extended families and multiple families living in quite cramped quarters. So that becomes it becomes an issue with you know, infections spreading really rapidly throughout families and throughout communities.
So as a physician, you're traveling between Nunavut and Northwest Territories. Are you still able to do that now?
I was. No, unfortunately the bubble's closed, much to my disappointment. We have no idea when it might open up again. Fairly unfortunate for me, but I mean, I'm quite happy to stay in Nunavut and stay put until we know more about the situation. I certainly wouldn't want to risk or become a risk to others.
Not being able to do much travel home. When are you hoping to get back again?
I haven't been back in Newfoundland since June 2019, so I tried to go back in January, but ended up getting stuck in Toronto for a week and a half because of Snowmageddon, and ended up not being able to be rebooked until after my vacation was slated to be over. And tried to go this past summer, but obviously wasn't able to enter. So maybe, hopefully next summer, I don't know, maybe 2022. I'm hopeful that things will turn a corner.
Are you feeling homesick these days?
For sure. Aspects of, I mean, I've been watching a good friend of mine just had a baby, and I've been watching another friend of mine's daughter grow up essentially over Instagram. So a little heartbreaking to not be able to see them in person. I miss the fog, actually, most of all.
Really?
Yeah, love it. Yeah, it just makes me really nostalgic.
So Teresa, before I let you go, do you have any parting words for people back home?
Stay healthy, and hi, Mom and Dad.
Well, you stay safe and stay warm in the north. Take care.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Nice. Well, the fog is beautiful. Well, stay tuned, because next Wednesday on Far From Home, you'll meet Megan Lee, a UK fashion model originally from the Goulds who's spending the pandemic in Tanzania. Welcome back. Returning now to our top story. After a sudden and dramatic exit from Cabinet, MHA Sherry Gambin-Walsh is speaking out about the RCMP investigation against her. She says she's not to blame for poor morale within the RNC. She's also addressing her friendship with an officer and accusations that she breached Cabinet confidentiality. Here's more of her conversation with reporter Rob Antle.
Yes, there are numerous texts between myself and Officer Didham. There is no doubt, but they were professional. The majority of them were professional. We're also friends, so there were some friendly texts, no doubt. We've known each other for 30 years. We worked really well together, and we got a lot of work done. As it pertains to the job at the Motor Registration Division, I was aware that the officer had spoken to a staff person who was exiting a position over there. It may in fact have been before my time as the Minister of Personnel. I'm not really certain about the timeline there, but I knew that he had spoken to somebody over there. I don't know if he ever applied for a job for motor MRD, but I can assure you that I never ever offered him a job, nor did he ever ask me to assist him in getting a job at MRD. So that is absolutely false. Again, I have brought through many pieces of legislation to the House of Assembly. I believe it's upwards of 25 pieces of legislation. And I myself had texted him a number of times and asked him about a number of different things, canopy, canopus, and driving as we were moving through that legislation. I asked him about speeding, about school zones, about, oh, the list could go on and on and on. You would find numerous texts where I'm asking him specific questions. I would read the legislation and I would read the media. I would read what my staff would give me, but I always go back to the people who are front line. And I did that with every single piece of legislation that I brought forward, from the Residential Tenancies Act to the Real Estate Trading Act, the Highway Traffic Act. It didn't matter. Any legislation that I was party to bringing forward in the House of Assembly, I personally consulted with the individuals on the ground who that particular piece of legislation were going to impact the most or had the most lived experience with it. I will not apologize for that. I will not apologize for consulting with the people of the province.
Did you provide confidential cabinet information to Paul Didham about RNC promotions?
So what I can confirm as it pertains to that, as I've already spoken about this on Open Line, was that, yes, I made a mistake of confirming for Officer Didham a rumor that he already knew. So he knew what was going on, and I was texting back and forth with him after a routine meeting, and I did confirm for him back and forth in the text that the rumor that he had heard was true. So that did happen. I did confirm for him that a rumor, and that was a mistake, and I should not have done that. In hindsight, I mean, we were close friends. We still are close friends, and we have been friends for 30 years. And it was more or less out of compassion. At the end of the day, tired, exhausted, he was frustrated, and you know, it was more or less, go home. Yes, that's true. I confirmed it. So there is a text message that if any person in the general population took a look at, they would say, yeah, she's saying to him, yeah, go home. Yes, this is true.
Did you have any idea you were under investigation before the RCMP showed up with the warrant for your phone?
I had absolutely no idea. I was floored. I was out for a daily morning walk when two officers came to me and asked me for my phones. I did not know what was going on. I had no idea why they wanted my phone. I was stunned. I was absolutely stunned. I called the Premier's office to let him know what was going on, and I really, truly had no idea. Hence why I wanted the information to obtain these phones myself. I wanted it to read it. I wanted to know what type of information does it take to just stop somebody on the side of the road and take their phones from them.
While many celebrated the first COVID-19 vaccinations in the UK, some are raising concerns about the potential side effects. This after two people suffered adverse reactions from the shot. But a respirologist is flagging that those individuals had similar issues in the past.
And these are people, in both cases, who had a history, we don't know exact details, but had a history of significant allergic reactions in the sense that both of them carried what's called an EpiPen or an adrenaline shot with them, which is something that you carry around if you've had a previous significant life-threatening allergic reactions.
According to the drug maker Pfizer, trials involving more than 42,000 people who all received 2 doses of the vaccine found no serious safety concerns. Regulators in Britain are now advising people who have a history of significant allergic reactions against taking the shot. The incidents are being investigated while the vaccination program continues.
Well, before we finish up tonight, Ashley, a bit of snow coming for the east tomorrow.
Yep, that's what it's looking like. We're going to see most of the day actually looking a little bit unsettled for most of us, either showers or flurries on the west coast. The good news is that we're going to see these winds finally ease, and then we're looking at temperatures in the minus single digits up through most of Labrador as well. Now that snow will move in, it looks like, overnight Thursday into the first half of Friday, making that a little bit of a slushy, probably morning commute for us in the east. It looks like at this point we're looking at anywhere from 5 to 10 centimeters of snow on the way.
have to dig out my snow scraper.
Yep, you're going to want to do that.
Where it
Put
is.
Just put it in the trunk just in case. Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad one of you made a call to the poinsettia people, or poinsettia.
I know, it looks
right?
great.
It does. Finally looking
Poinsettia.
festive.
I haven't decided. Is poinsettia?
They're beautiful plants.
Yes.
They are.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.